Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Conrail Historical Society's third quarter virtual membership meeting. With the state of the world right now, we decided to do this instead of our usual large gathering in Marion. That would have been kind of a safety issue for many of our members. So we're trying a new format, and we're going to see what happens. So I am your president, Rudy Garbely. We've got a couple other people on here that'll be running some things today. Ed Kaprasinski is our kind of resident web guy. He'll be running some of this. And Jim Stanton, who's our vice president, will also have an announcement coming up. So right now, I've got everybody on mute because we're just trying to make sure that we don't end up with 35 people talking at once. And as people are going to be presenting, we will unmute them. I need to change this so people can join automatically because I'm not going to be able to admit people like this all day. So with that, let me throw this over to Ed, I think. And Ed, if you want to introduce kind of what we're doing and what we have lined up today. Let me see if I can make you a host. Make it host.
There we go. You would think I do these meetings all day, right? I should. If we did it in Microsoft Teams, I'd be a pro. All right. Well, as Rudy said, welcome everyone. We're really excited to be doing this. I think it's important for us to stay connected, and we might as well use the internet for it. So today's meeting, we're going to start with our business meeting, and then we're going to go over to Jim Stanton with a really exciting announcement. Carolyn is going to talk a little bit about membership. I'm going to go do a little bit through talking about our archives and our online archive site, give you a tour both in the front of the scenes if you haven't seen things there yet, and also get a little peek behind the curtain on how we manage all that stuff. Then Brian Elgenberg is going to give us a presentation on his Tales from the River, his experiences working the river line. And then we're going to finish up with Rudy going through a bunch of slides of the CRHS's collection, all from Ralph Kirschgale. So I think we're going to wait another minute or so. Looks like there are still a couple people waiting to get in. There we go. Hopefully that's everyone. Yeah, we'll give it another minute or so for people to join. But thanks for bearing with us while we hang out. All right, it's 5 after. Shall we get started with the business meeting, Rudy?
We can do that. I've been informed by our membership chair that I'm going to be doing the membership report. So,
well, there. She is the boss, right?
I was just told. As of today, so let's start with that while it's fresh in my mind. As of today, we have 405 members, which is the highest we've had in several years. It's been about 5 years since we were up around that level. So that's good. That's a major increase for us. And
how do I, Rudy? I'm going to try to ping your video here.
Okay, because
maybe.
Or do I have to do that?
No, there we go. I think you have to do that.
Okay, hang on. Pin video. Hey, look at that.
And I think you have to stop sharing your screen. Nope.
Now do you see me?
No, I see Jim.
Okay.
Hold on. This worked while we were rehearsing.
Let's see. How about that?
There we go. There's Rudy.
Right. Hi. Anyway, so yes, we have 405 members right now, which is very good for us, and it's a good increase over what we've had the past couple of years. So membership is on the rise, which is a great thing for a historical society to say. What other business do we have? The quarterly went to print. I did the proofs for it yesterday, so hopefully in the next week and a half or so, the summer quarterly will come out. And there's some information in there that will relate to the announcement that Jim is going to be giving us in a couple of minutes. So I'm not going to talk too much about the quarterly right now.
You want to talk about the Caboose book?
We can talk about the Caboose book. I don't think I have the proofs on me here, but they're downstairs. So I have completed work on the Society's book on Conrail cabooses. That went to the printer about 3 weeks ago. I actually have the first set of proofs here. I haven't gotten the second set of proofs yet, but we are on schedule for an early September release. The book will be 308 pages, hardcover. There's about 620 photos in the book, 28 caboose diagrams, scanned from the original Conrail diagrams, information on every class of cabooses, full rosters for every class of cabooses. The book is going to be full color, and it will be $70. There's been a link circulated, actually in the bottom of the email with the login information for this meeting. If you want to pre-order a copy, we ordered 800 of them. We sold about 450 already. So if you want to get a copy, grab yours now. So that's that. That's been my project for the past several months. The other project I've had, oh, hey, look. This is our Secretary Carolyn. This is the proofs of the book. Not a whole lot to see here other than it looks pretty. But, so this is the first set of proofs. This is the front and back cover. So this is the layout and information and make sure there's no typos kind of proofs. I'll get a second set of proofs sometime later in August that show the full set of color printing and everything. This is being done by Joss Dickinson in Tennessee, and the facility that prints this stuff is actually served by R.J. Corman. So the paper for these books is delivered by rail, which is kind of cool. That's that. What else do we have to discuss business-wise?
Well, we could talk about the X72 announcement from our friends at Rapido. Because,
I have the...
never above shilling a little bit here.
Well, and we did help with that. So
that's true.
So, just earlier this week.
Here, I can share my screen.
Do you have the announcement up?
I do.
Okay, I was going to pull it up, but good for you. Do I have to allow you to do that?
You do have to allow me to do that.
I'm making you the host again.
Oh, you're all in trouble now.
There you go.
There we go. All right. So our friends at Rapido, those crazy Canadians, they have they've announced that they're going to be doing X72s, the legendary Evans box, or Evans, sorry, the Evans box car. We actually worked with the folks at Rapido, providing them some documentation and photos for these cars. So we know that the Conrail ones should be pretty spot on. And we're going to be getting two variations of them at first. There's the small logo and the big logo, which I'm sure is going to be.
The small logo was the Hollidaysburg repaints. The big logo was the Meadville repaints. So we got two different shop repaints there.
Plus, the Penn Central scheme hung around for a long time too. Mm-hmm. So, all right, there's the advertising for that. And while I'm at it, I actually just found out about 5 minutes ago that Blueford Shops in N-Scale is doing a set of Conrail patch-out twin hoppers. Not a huge class, but should be some, a little bit of variety for those of you who are N-scalers.
Cool.
All right, that's the end of the shilling part of the video. Well, for now, anyway.
So, What else we have business-wise before we get to Jim here? I think that's really about it.
All right.
Obviously, we're monitoring the COVID-19 situation, and we're going to make a call on our event in November as it gets closer. We haven't even booked anything yet because all of the venues that are usually available are not taking new bookings for events at the moment. Actually, an update on, we were supposed to do an event at the Railroad Museum, Pennsylvania in September. They're having a Railroad Days there, and we were invited to have a table there. And that was very tentative. It was supposed to be September 12th. As of this morning, it sounds like that is not going to happen, which is unfortunately in the quarterly. It went to print yesterday, but oh well. So we're probably not doing that event in September, and we'll kind of see what goes on in November and make a decision on that as it gets closer. I think that's about it for our business stuff at the moment.
All right. Well, then is it time to get to the big announcement?
I think so.
All right. Are you the host right now, or
You are still the host right now.
All right.
So I'll have to throw that over to Jim.
Let's see. Does pinning the video? Nope, that doesn't do it. Spotlighting the video? There we go. All right, Jim, you are live.
I'll have to unmute him too, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you again for everybody for joining us at the quarterly meeting virtually. We promise this is worth your while. And matter of fact, if you know how to take a screenshot of your computer while this is going on live, you might want to prepare to do this because this announcement is exclusive for our members. We wanted our members to break the news for us. The press release is not going to go out to Monday, so you guys can have this all weekend on your social media accounts. But the Conrail Historical Society has acquired a new, shall we say, artifact, Rudy?
That's sure, yes.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and reveal our latest artifacts to the Conrail Historical Society collection, and then I'll go ahead and let Rudy start with some background on what everybody is seeing. Here we go.
So, yeah, that is our new X67 class boxcar. It was originally Conrail 295 633 and Penn Central before that. Built in April of 1970. And it was donated in January of this year by CSX Transportation. We have some pretty big plans for this car. That's why we haven't made the announcement today, because we were lining everything up. Do you want to talk a little bit about the process for getting this car to the point that we're at today, or do you want me to do that?
Why don't you go ahead and, I guess, start with the backstory and the conversation with CSX.
Okay. So back in December of last year, we had started, well, okay, let's go back a little further than that. Back in the middle of last year, we loaned our Pennsylvania Railroad signal to the Cumberland Valley Railroad Museum in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania. And the museum undertook the restoration of the signal, completely rewiring it. Here's Jim. Jim playing Vanna White over there.
Can't miss him.
We loaned our signal to the Cumberland Valley Railroad Museum, and they undertook the restoration of it and restored it to operation and installed it at their trailhead in Shippensburg. So the signal is now sitting there. It is operational 24 hours a day. It just cycles through the 3 position lights on it. That was all funded by the Cumberland Valley Railroad Museum. And so far, it's been a fantastic partnership. And we started talking to them about how we could further partner with them. They also opened, the museum itself is inside a Penn Central boxcar. And I don't remember the class of that car, so forgive me on that one.
857 Bravo.
There you go. That was behind an industry in Shippensburg for 40 years, and they dug it out and they restored it and built a museum inside the car. So in December of this year, or of last year, I'm sorry, 2019, we reached out to some of our friends at CSX and asked if they had any boxcars available for donation, thinking we would do something similar and be able to house our archives in it. And it turned out that this car was coming directly out of service. It was an auto parts service for General Motors in Parma, Ohio. And they were removing it from service at the end of December because it was coming up on its 50-year mark. So CSX graciously took the car right out of service and sent it to us, and we had it in our hands. I think it was January 16th it showed up. So we had just over a month from our request to when the car actually came in. Since then, we've been making the arrangements with the Cumberland Valley Railroad Museum, which is located on the property of the Cumberland Valley Rail Trail, to lease a piece of property right next to the existing boxcar and plan a museum. And as part of that process, we reached out to the Cumberland Valley Visitors Bureau, which is run by the Cumberland Area Economic Development Corporation, and asked them about tourism grants. So as of this past week, the Conrail Historical Society has been awarded $100,000 as a tourism grant to turn this boxcar into a museum. So sometime in the next couple of weeks, and we don't really have an exact time frame on this because the trucker, which is Dave's Truck Repair in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, is doing this at a heavily discounted rate on his own schedule. When he's available, this car will be moved by road about 11 miles into Shippensburg, Pennsylvania, where it will be placed on the rail trail on a piece of track that was donated by Conrail Shared Assets. And we'll begin working on it to turn it into a museum. It will also house our archives, which is the other part of this project, because it's humongous. It's 86 feet long. We've basically decided we're going to section off one end of the car, about 33 feet or so, to the end of the door opening. And that will become our archives, which is actually a larger archive space than we currently have in Harrisburg. The other 53 feet of the car will become a kind of museum to display a lot of our artifacts and kind of have some interpretive panels and history information for the general public. The museum will be unstaffed exactly the same way that the Cumberland Valley Railroad Museum is. It is operated on a door timer that is set to sun up to sundown. And Jim is showing here, one of the interesting things about the X67 is these belt rails that were specified by Ford when the cars were built in 1970. X67s are the only cars that have this belt rail arrangement at the end of the car, so they could add shelving in and put small parts in the end of the car. So one of the things we're going to do at the museum is put a piece of plexiglass or something like that over that piece of belt rail so we can display that in the museum. The rest of the car will probably have fully framed out walls inside of these existing walls. Anyway, yeah, so we'll be turning this into a museum and archive space, and we hoped, because the money is already in hand, we have to contribute $34,000 from our own coffers / other donations that we're receiving for materials and labor towards the project, and then the $100,000 from the Cumberland Valley Visitors Bureau. And because the money's already in hand, we've already started preparations on the site in Shippensburg. Jim, did they put the track down already or no?
No, we're in the first phase of construction. We kind of had to wait until we were sure that our location was the final location selected and that our grant was finalized. But currently right now, there is a half of a track bed prepared. So there is slate down, the ground is compacted, All we need now is ballast and then the placement of the track panels. And then we'll be ready for the next phase, which is the movement of this massive car.
So we have the money from the grant. We have our own money in hand. So we expect this thing to be open to the public sometime next year. We got kind of delayed by the coronavirus thing and everything shutting down. We were originally shooting for spring, but I suspect now we're probably looking at late summer or fall, realistically. But yeah, so that's the boxcar. Jim,
Some of this,
want to add to that?
some of the stuff that we really like about this car, you know, beggars can't be choosers. And CSX came through very, very quickly on the request, which was just tremendous. It surprised us, but at the same time allowed this project to go from sometime down the road in this decade to 2020 right now. When the car came to us, there were two areas up on the ceiling that needed a little bit of attention with welding to make sure that the car was totally watertight. Those of you who have a longer history with preserving Conrail's history are familiar with the idea of making sure that you have a watertight car that you can store things in. And we luckily have a car that's in fantastic shape. If you saw on the outside when we were doing our tour, this car went in for a rebuild in 2003. Almost half of the rivets were replaced. And then the car was painted fresh in April of 2003. And it really looks like whoever did that rebuild work did a tremendous job, because unfortunately we could not find any trace of Penn Central or Conrail underneath that paint. Rudy gave it a real good look over trying to find some type of evidence of its lineage, but we were not able to track that down.
Yeah, I think they sandblasted the whole car because it looks like they did a bunch of rivet work. Probably 20 to 25% of the rivets on this car were replaced in 2003, which is really good because that was one of our main concerns with a riveted boxcar, was that we'd have problems with riveted panels or the edges, or they'd be peeling or there'd be rust under them. And it looks like when they rebuilt the car in 2003, they did a very solid job of getting another 17 years of service out of it. So,
and Rudy's going to show you some diagrams here, but envision this area here is where folks will walk into the museum, and inside that museum, say, oh, I already forget the diagram. So the archives down here, Rudy?
Yeah.
Okay, so standing here will be a bulkhead wall, and you are looking down at what would be the museum space. So it's roughly about 50 feet of museum space. And of course, we have these beautiful high ceilings to also work with. But then looking the other way, this section will actually be walled off to the public, and we will be able to get ourselves out from the annual cost of our storage units, which are several $1,000s a year. And we will be able to house hopefully all, if not almost everything, including some large pieces that are currently not being paid for in storage. They will be all over here on this side of the car with a wall and a locked door in between. The car will be climate controlled and humidity controlled on both sides of the wall. Obviously, that's very important for the archives and the amount of paper that is there, but it's also important, of course, for visitor comfort. Nobody wants to come to a metal boxcar in July without air conditioning and humidity control, because I can tell you right now, this is the world's biggest easy bake oven.
It's got to be warm in there today.
Yes. Here we can see some evidence of our skilled forklift drivers at the various Ford and General Motors plants over the years. But where this stands right now, once we have the pad completed, we'll work with our transportation partner as far as when that move can occur to actually get the car to its location. And then once we get the car to Shippensburg, which was actually one of 3 possible locations that we did explore here. There were a couple of different grant opportunities. There were a couple of different partners that we did talk to, but in comparing the offers, the grant that came from the Cumberland Valley Visitors Bureau was phenomenal. As everybody's aware, we're here meeting virtually because of the pandemic. The virus has also taken a big hit when it comes to fundraising. You've seen a lot of other operations that have had to either pause their operations or constrict their operations because of the restrictions when it comes to finding money, whether it comes from individual donors or corporate donors, governmental donors. So the partnership with the Cumberland Valley Visitors Bureau is fantastic because it really allows this project to not be put on hold indefinitely until folks have some sort of idea of what things will happen once we get on the other side of this virus. We're able to, working with our contractors, working with our painting contractors, transportation partners, we're basically able to do this work ahead of time. And the way that the museum is going to be laid out is, other than restricting the number of people who would be in at any given time, we're able to have our museum open and operating. Rudy, what I forget?
I was just saying, I got the diagram here if you want me to pull it up.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and show folks. We've gone from the imagination part. Let's show them what it'll actually look like.
So, so part of the grant application, we had to actually show them what we planned on doing. Ed, I need to reclaim the host from you, I think.
Yep, there you go.
Let me add the people that just joined here, including, let's see. I wish there was a way to like automatically let people in. Do that? There we go. Hey, look at that. Okay. All right, everybody got in here, and here is the diagram that we submitted. Hopefully you guys can see that, I think.
Yep.
Okay, that's the diagram that we submitted along with our grant application with the rough layout of what we plan on doing inside the car. Obviously, lots of display cases. We have a lot of smaller artifacts, signs, things that can hang on the wall. And we plan on putting up some TV screens in the car as well, so we can do rotating photos and things of that nature. So you can see there where the wall is. My mouse. There's a wall here that separates the archives off from the rest of the car. This will be our archive space with some tables and some workstations, both for our own archivists to work on, as well as any researchers that want to make an appointment and come in and do some research to be able to work on with the materials we have, which is right now not possible given the space that we're working in a access restricted storage unit. So this is the rough plan. Obviously the other side of the car, it's not shown in this diagram, will just be visible to the public as a Conrail car. If I move here to a different screen, can I do that? There we go. Oh, went through it. So that's our photoshopped mock-up of what the car will look like on site. Kind of just to give a general idea of what we're planning on doing. That is the actual location it will be in. In the background of this photo, you can see our signal all the way on the right side. That's where it sits, and the Penn Central boxcar is visible just beyond that tree there. That is the Cumberland Valley Railroad Museum. So this is the actual location the car will end up in Shippensburg, right at the trailhead of the Cumberland Valley Rail Trail. And then we found this photo, and I can't remember the gentleman's name who shared this with us. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Mr. Ron Hawkins took this photo in Cajon, California on September 30th, 1977. This is actually our car. This is the one that we have received. We have not found a photo of this car in Conrail paint yet, so if anyone has a photo of that floating around their collections, we would greatly appreciate that. But this is This is our car with its original aluminum doors that were later replaced with steel by Conrail. Jim, if you want to show the new steel doors are the same design, but they have a third roller on the center of the door because they're heavier. So they needed extra rollers up top to keep them from falling off the side of the car. So Jim's about to, I think, show that.
All right, hold on. You got to make Jim the.
Yeah, let's see if I can stop the share here. If I go back to Jim's screen, it does. Look at that. So Jim, if you go up to the top of the door there, the third roller in the middle there, that's how you can tell which of these. Yep, that's how you can tell which ones of these cars had the doors replaced and which ones didn't, because they realized the aluminum doors were so light that the forklifts were knocking them off the tracks. So that this car has got the steel door replacements that were the same design, just had extra rollers up top. So in the Penn Central photo, which I'll go back to, look at that door lid. So in that Penn Central photo, there is a notation above the reporting marks here. It says BRO. That indicates the car was in service for Ford out of Brownstown, Michigan. So we know this car is assigned service, at least in early Conrail. Again, this was taken in '77. We do not have a photo of this car in Conrail paint. We actually don't have a photo of it again until after it was rebuilt by CSX. So anyone who has a photo of this car in Conrail paint, that would be greatly appreciated. So that is essentially the boxcar project. I don't know if I missed anything. Oh, Jim, do you want me to show the photos of the inside of the Cumberland Valley Railroad Museum for comparison? I think he's nodding. Okay. All right, so let's pull those up real quick. So this is the Cumberland Valley Railroad Museum project that is literally at 150 feet down the trail from where our boxcar is going to end up. So this car was pulled out of the weeds behind a foundry a couple years ago, fully restored, repainted, and placed on this piece of panel track at Shippensburg. So this is the outside of the museum, both sides. Nice level decking to get into the car. Like I said, they have time lock doors on it, so it is open sun up to sundown. And this is what the interior looks like. Now we're going to do probably a little bit different design for ours, but the same concept, where we're going to have basically a room built inside of the boxcar, and that'll be our museum. As you can see, there's plenty of space here for exhibits, for panels on the wall. And this is a much smaller car than we're going to have as well. And also, again, for our archives on the same amount of space. So just an example of what, similar to what we're going to plan on doing. Obviously, we have some lessons we are going to learn from what the Cumberland Valley Railroad Museum did as well, particularly related to the display cases and there being sharp corners on them, which I cracked my head on while we were there. So we'll fix that problem in our own museum. But yeah, so this is kind of generally what we have as a concept for our museum. Jim, I don't, other than the interesting boxcar art that came on our car that Jim is showing there. Let me see if I can pull that back up. So that's actually put on there by railroaders. There's a couple pieces of actual railroader boxcar art on the car currently. And there's some of the new rivets. You can see the differences in the new rivets that were put on versus the old round-headed ones. Jim showing in that photo. So we are going to document all of the art on the car as part of the car's history, even though it's not necessarily Conrail history. It is part of the history of the car. So we're going to document all of that before we strip the paint off of it and repaint it Conrail. I think that's it. Thank you, Jim, for being on location. You got more? Are you muted? Should you not be muted?
Yeah, he's muted.
He's muted.
Thanks, Rudy.
There you go.
I just wanted to say that this project, even with the tremendous help from the Cumberland Valley Visitors Bureau, the partnership with the Cumberland Valley Rail Trail, our transportation partner with Dave's Trucking, and of course CSX for even thinking to donate this car to us. None of this could have been possible without the record number of members that were mentioned at the beginning of the business meeting. The idea that we have 405 people on board and that there are people making contributions without even knowing that this project was a possibility. They were just making contributions to support the idea and preserving Conrail's history, meant that when we were in a position, when CSX says, do you want this car? And then when we had to fill out a grant application and there were certain requirements as far as matching dollars and a viable plan and a strong membership to be the base to launch this from, we checked every single box that needed to be checked. And that comes from the members. You know, obviously we're working hard out here to preserve Conrail's history with you, but we can't do it alone. And it really does come down to individual annual memberships, small donations, purchasing items from the shop. All of that money is kept and jealously protected. The Historical Society is running a very, very tight fiscal ship. And because of that, we were even in this position to begin with to just leap out and grab this brass ring and finally give the Conrail archives and the Conrail story a physical home where people can come and visit and actually learn more about Conrail and see, you know, folks have seen photographs of our archives. They've been able to request specific items from documents, but now we will have a physical home where people can come from across the world and come and see what the Conrail Historical Society is all about.
Yeah, and just a note on what Jim said there too. You know, the one of the big parts of this project was the fact that we had the money on hand. We had a guarantee that we had the money on hand to invest the remaining $34,000 in this project before we could even get the grant for $100,000. So one of the big parts of this was that people have been donating. I don't want to say blindly, but kind of donating to us in anticipation that we will take on other projects. And the fact that that's happened over the past couple of years is what made this possible, because we needed to have the money on hand long before we could even begin announcing it. And therefore we couldn't really fundraise for it directly. So that's been wonderful. We have a question in chat here about John McLaughlin asked if this is a Thrall built car. This car was actually built at Sam Ray at Hollidaysburg by Penn Central. This class of 86-foot boxcar, the X67 class, was the only class of 86-foot boxcar that was built by a railroad and not by a railroad car builder. There were cars built by, I think, Greenville, Thrall, and Pullman built 86-foot cars. But no other railroad built the run besides Penn Central. So this is the only class of car that was home built. And that's kind of why it's an important piece of preservation for us. It's very, it's got a unique origin story as well that's related to Conrail.
The other thing we like too is on the Cumberland Valley Rail Trail, the Penn Central car there, the 857B, is actually a Conrail car. That car was sold from Conrail to the foundry. So even though it wears clean, unpatched Penn Central paint, that was a Conrail car, and that paint was last applied in December of 1975 at Sam Ray.
Tristan just noted in the chat as well, in our upcoming quarterly, the summer quarterly, we actually interviewed and got an article from a guy named Dick Dawson, who was actually the designer of this car at Penn Central. So there's a whole article in the quarterly about the design of this car, the process of designing and building them at Sam Ray, and all of that. So that's coming up like I said, in the next week or week and a half or so, you should be able to see that in your mailbox. That was a pretty cool article to do. Dick was also the guy that was responsible for the, he later worked for Railbox, and was the responsible for the design of the original Railbox, as well as the, I think it was the impact cars. So Dick was a very prolific designer of rail equipment, and basically most trains you see on the today.
Look at how easy those doors roll.
Yep.
We love this car.
So.
Were there any other questions before, or any other parts of the car that anybody wanted to see a close-up of before we finish up here?
I don't see anything else in the chat.
It's the All Request Hits Hour Railroad Edition.
I think that's it. Yeah, there's no espresso machine. You'll have to provide your own if you want to do a presentation on the Conrail story. So, all right. I think that's it. So thank you, Jim, for being on location there today. Share this and socially distance our announcement. And
I'm excited, and I have more updates for you as we go along.
Yeah, like I said, there's a whole article on this project in the upcoming quarterly, and plus there's 2 more articles. Like I said, the one by the designer and one about the service of these cars on Conrail. So the whole next quarterly is going to be on this project. So, and for everybody else watching here, big thank you to Jim for spearheading a lot of this boots on the ground stuff, making sure we got the grant money arranged, which is absolutely integral to this. Arranging the current storage of the car, arranging the movement of the car, arranging the movement of the track panels that Conrail donated. Jim has done the bulk of the work on this project. So a big thanks to him from me and everybody else on the board for taking this on. So thank you, Jim.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. All right, Ed, I'm going to throw this over at you, and then you can announce our next presentation, I suppose. Let me see if I can curl this over to your to you as the host here. Make host. Ed, you're the host.
There we go. Well, all right. I don't think I'm going to be, I don't have anything nearly as exciting to talk about as there's a boxcar at a museum. But I plan on talking about what are some of the things that are going to go in that museum. So as we've
hang on,
talked about.
Do you want to let Brian go first and then talk about the archives right before I present about the archives?
Yeah, we can do that. Brian, are you ready to go?
You gotta unmute him. There was a real quick while we unmute Brian. There was a question in chat about the NYC reporting marks on the boxcar. The boxcar has NYC reporting marks because at the Conrail split in 1999, a lot of the Conrail equipment numbers interfered with those that were already on CSX or NS's roster. So anything that went to CSX got NYC reporting marks to differentiate that from their own equipment. So that number on the car, 23880, was actually the number that Conrail assigned to the car in the late 1980s when they did some work on the bulkheads inside the car. They changed the number. So when CSX got it, they just kept the Conrail number and they assigned New York Central reporting marks. So that is actually a CSX reporting mark, it's just NYC. All right. If there's other questions, Ed and Brian, all you.
All right, now I'm going to figure out how to. All right, Brian, I'm going to make you the host. So that's going to. There we go. And then there should be a button down the bottom for sharing your screen if you want to share your screen.
Yep, got it. A question, how much time do I have here? Because I kind of got two presentations.
As long as you want.
Okay.
The longer you talk, the less Rudy and I have to. And I think everyone would be appreciative of that.
What the heck? Did I do this right? Okay.
There we go.
Okay. If I get my thing going here. My first presentation is about Selkirk Yard in the 1970s. Now, I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Brian Elgenberg. I retired from CSX last September after a 43-year career. I hired out originally in 1976 on the track gang in DeWitt. Of course, you get laid off in the wintertime on the track gang, but January 1977, they had that famous blizzard in Buffalo, and I went up there to work for 2 weeks. While I was working up there, somebody told me who I could see to transfer over to the transportation department after I was laid off again. So I did that, and the good news is I was made a brakeman on Valentine's Day of 1977. The bad news was there was no way I was working in Buffalo. Buffalo put the Consolidated in Consolidated Rail Corporation. You had men from Lehigh Valley, Erie, Lackawanna, basically all their jobs were abolished. Men came from the west, and I remember after I moved to Selkirk, I'd look on the bid sheets where they had youngest man working by location. Selkirk's junior man was 1955. So in September 77, I moved to Selkirk, and I worked there pretty steadily till 1981. Okay, let's see how to do this. Now this is a copy of this picture's from the copy of the guidebook that Conrail made for Selkirk Yard. I have guidebooks from New York Central, Penn Central, Conrail, and CSX. Now, an interesting note about this picture, I can tell the date roughly. It's sometime in the mid-1980s, probably when I was furloughed, because if you see up here, this is the local yard, and there's several tracks of engines stored there. I think there's some here too. I can't really tell, but there were, when the recession hit, a lot of the older engines were stored in Selkirk Yard. They used what was called the local yard. Now this is a flow chart from the guidebook, and it gives you a good aerial view of Selkirk. You have the receiving yard. Of course, most of you probably know the procedure. The trains come into the receiving yard. The power goes to the engine house. Back then, there were, transportation employees, bleeders, who bled off the air brakes on the cars. The car department would inspect them. The humper would shove them over the hump. So this is This is stats from the guidebook. Shows the total area. The one thing that's not correct there is the grade for the south departure yard, 0%. The south departure yard had a very steep downhill grade to go under the bridge on the inbound track, and then a steep uphill grade on the other side. Another thing they left out was the length of Selkirk Yard. And if you look at an old timetable, the distance between the two interlockings on either side of the yard was 5.4 miles. Now this is kind of a map of Selkirk Yard at the time. You had the receiving yard, which had 11 tracks, but track 1 was basically used as a running track. Track 11 was kind of a through track. It was actually signaled down to here. So you had tracks 2 through 10 to actually receive trains. And of course, you had the inbound track. This is where any freight trains from the east came in through into the receiving yard. You had a classification yard with 70 tracks, track 11 through 80. Now, any cars that needed to go to the shop for repairs got humped down to tracks 11 and 12. Track 80 had a scale. So any cars that needed to be weighed went to 80. Now, you had on the hump for jobs, you had 2 humpers on duty at any time, sometimes 3 when things got really busy. You also had a trimmer, which was just one single locomotive, and an engineer and a brakeman. And basically, the trimmer would stand by here on this track called the escape. And if a car got hung up, they could shoot out there real quick and shove it in the clear. Of course, you also hooked track from time to time when the east end got behind. There was also, on the south end of the yard, there was a retarder tower. There was one man in there, and he kind of was a manual override for the retarders. And if you were qualified, that was a good money-making job because they always seemed to need retarder tower operators. Okay, next we'll go down to the east end. Now, the east end is where the yard pullers worked. There were 4 pullers at any given time. And they each had their own radio channel. And you see you have 3 drill tracks. The dead end tracks here over here. Then you had the south departure on the south side, the north departure, and what was called the local yard lead. Pullers could use any of those tracks to drill. You had a car shop here. It's not shown on the map, but there were 2 stub tracks here for cabooses. As I said, there were 4 pullers. You also had several what they call buck jobs. You had an auto buck, which worked the auto site. You had a shop buck, which actually switched car shop. It pulled the shops out of 11 and 12 and take them over to the car shop. Also pick up any rips that got thrown out of the train. You also had a port job, which was basically a local job and went down to the port of Albany. You had to be qualified. That was technically a road job. You also had a general buck back then. Those are long gone, but it pulled the cabooses, set them up. It would throw the rips out of any outbound road freight trains. Of course, today the road crew has to do it. And of course, you had 2 departure yards. You had the north departure here, which had 11 tracks. You had a north runner on the top, on the north side. You had a south runner, and then you had 1 through 11, which way you could build trains on. You'd see these tracks were pretty long. The south departure yard, which I think was put in actually as an afterthought, you had tracks 12 through 16. They were shorter, and normally the B&A trains were made up here because they weren't as long because of the mountains. So you also had top end here. And this was the old yard. And the old yard was actually part of the original Selkirk yard. It was actually the receiving yard of the second hump. And there was a top end buck that worked up there, and it would switch the local industries, GE, Owens Corning, and Airco. But they also, back in the 70s, all the westbound vans of Conrail got switched here in the old yard. And the top end buck usually went to work. It was a night job, and you would switch the industries. Then you would hang around for a couple hours until whenever the van trains came in. Then you would switch out the vans, reclassify them. The vans would come in, get reclassified, and all go out. There was only, all the eastbound vans just went through except for one. TV10 came in, dropped off a block of cars, and went on to New Jersey. And there was a TV10B, which picked up the cars for the B&A. And this move was still being done when I retired last September. Of course, sometime in the, I'm not sure when, they closed the van site here. It was like the last van site that I knew of that still used circus loading. There were only 2 tracks, and I got maybe 4 or 5 cars a night. So once they closed that van site, they weren't classifying the van trains in the old yard anymore. And today it's used for auto racks. They basically do the same thing with the westbound auto racks. I guess I should give you a little bit of history. Selkirk Yard was completed in 1924. And it was, in its original configuration, it had 2 humps, an eastbound hump and a westbound hump. Now, the original eastbound hump was somewhere around here, and then the westbound hump was somewhere around here. but they closed one of the humps in the 1950s, and they moved all that work to Syracuse. And then in the late 60s, they basically rebuilt Selkirk from the ground up. That was a project, started by New York Central, completed by Penn Central. That's why this is called the Old Yard. It's the only remnant of the original yard, and it's the only part of Selkirk that still has stick rail. Okay, what else here? Now the GYO here, the General Yard Office, is where road crews reported to work. And occasionally, on and off, there would be what jobs called engine changes. It would be one engineer and one brakeman, and they would take power to wherever it was needed. Okay, now this is a map of Conrail routes in the Albany area. You see, Selkirk Yard was here. Now, like I said, Selkirk was part of a 1924, opened in 1924 as part of the Hudson River Connecting Railroad, which was this branch off the Hudson and one off the B&A, and the Castleton Bridge, which it's a pretty big bridge, and of course Selkirk Yard. Now Selkirk, the Hudson River Connecting Railroad connected here with the old West Shore, which used to have a line from here down to Ravenna, but that was abandoned in the 60s. No, let me get my notes here. But before Selkirk, the yard was West Albany. And West Albany it's in a small valley. You had a steep grade right here that all trains had to be pushed up. It was a tremendous bottleneck, which is why Selkirk was built, to avoid that bottleneck. Now, the last steam engine left Selkirk in 1953. And I've read that, there were big steam engine shops in West Albany. And when the steam engines left, 1,500 people were laid off at the West Albany shops. Now, a little bit about the work we had in the 70s. You had several traveling switchers that worked out of West Albany. You had one that went up to Troy, down to Castleton, and worked at Port of Rensselaer. You had jobs that worked, there were little branches here, Tivoli Street, which went down the middle of a street, and Railroad Avenue, which is an industrial park. Both of those are gone. And of course, you had jobs up the Aqueduct and Sandbank, which was a transfer point for the Delaware and Hudson Railroad. Now, the jobs out of West Albany, they switched over the years. Sometimes they were in South Schenectady, sometimes they're West Albany. And today, CSX has got jobs in both, I guess. Only I think 2 in West Albany, 1 in South Schenectady. Now, another job was, we had 2 transfer runs a day to Boston and Maine here at Rotterdam Junction. And the trains would go up, they would usually drop the cars off at Gilderland Center, which was an old military warehouse built in World War II, as was South Schenectady. But these jobs were considered road jobs. They're called off the road extra list, and most people didn't like to get them because, well, it was a long shove down, and then you had to run around your train between Hoffman's and Amsterdam. In fact, there was also, for a few years, there was a traveling switcher in Amsterdam, and it served this Kellogg's industrial track, the track that goes up a steep hill behind Amsterdam to serve some old mills, which, to my knowledge, is still being serviced by CSX, but out of South Schenectady. Now, a little bit about Amtrak in this area at the time. Shortly after Penn Central was formed in '69, they closed the Schenectady train station. It was a big old empty building, cost a lot to heat, and well, not many people were getting on, so they sold it to the city of Schenectady for $20,000, who demolished it in 1970. As a substitute, they opened a small station here in Colony, Schenectady. And for quite a while, Amtrak trains actually went, rather than on the main line, they would go on the Selkirk branch and then over the Carmen branch to Albany Rensselaer Station. And in 1978, I think it was, this Mohawk River Bridge burned. And that cut off access to Sandbank Yard, so that there was no more of that. And I guess the state paid to rehabilitate this all, reopen a new Schenectady train station, which opened October of 1979. Of course, once it reopened, nobody was getting on at Colony, Schenectady, and Amtrak closed that station a few weeks later. Now, another train we got to talk about is the Lakeshore Limited, 48 and 49. Now, when Amtrak was first formed, they did not have the Lakeshore Limited. Empire Service trains only went to Buffalo. So Penn Central tore up the Post Road branch. Now, when Amtrak reinstated the Lakeshore Limited on October, that was actually Halloween Day, 1975, this connection didn't exist. So the Boston train, the Boston section, had to go all the way down the Hudson, back up the Hudson River Connecting Railroad to CPSM, and then head east, which of course added a bit to the running time. But Amtrak replaced the Post Road branch in 1979, and which, Amtrak's been pretty much the same now ever since. All the way down the main line in the Post Road branch. And of course, today Amtrak owns from CP11, the main line, Post Road branch, and the Hudson all the way down to Poughkeepsie, where of course Metro North owns the rest of it. Of course, the Aqueduct branch, Railroad Ave, Tivoli Street are all gone. Still get a lot of cars at Gilvin Center. The Rotterdam Junction interchange, I don't think they do anymore. The track is still there. But a lot of the B&M now is interchanged on the B&A from Ayer, Massachusetts down to Worcester. And we still go to Troy. In fact, every time I drive by there seems to be more cars than there used to be. So that's pretty much it for, I got to mention here too. Well, prior to 1983, of course, Conrail employees manned the Amtrak trains. Now, passenger trains had a separate list from the freight crews. So you wouldn't get called for passenger trains unless you're on the passenger list. And of course, you had a uniform and were qualified. But there were a couple of jobs that you could get off the Selkirk Yard list. And that was the Albany Rensselaer Depot switcher. You could also get called for the baggage jobs on 448 and 449. And I worked those a few times. I enjoyed them. It was a nice change of pace. There was one Christmas Eve, they called me up and they were desperate. They had nobody to man an Amtrak passenger train in New York. I told them I didn't want to do it. I backed out. I tried to back out, but they had nobody. They begged and pleaded, so I took it. I didn't have a uniform, so I just put on my one and only tie. Ended up going from Albany Rensselaer down to New York, from New York back to Albany Rensselaer, and onward to Syracuse. Of course, my 12 hours was up then, so I got headed home. Made some good money. And basically, all I did was sit in the rear power car of the turbo liners, because the dragging equipment detectors at that time were just a little flashing light on a pole. And the hotbox detectors were a little number board. They were not, no radio. So somebody had to be at the rear of the train to observe these things when you went over them, which was one of your main job in the caboose, actually. And speaking of cabooses, I'm really looking forward to that book. I've already ordered it, because this period of my career was when I rode around in cabooses a lot, and I really enjoyed that. And the other nice thing about it is I worked with some of the old timers, the guys that remember steam, they remember the 20th Century Limited, and they had stories to tell. And of course, I got laid off in 1981. And of course, by the time I got back, I started working regularly in 1987 after I got qualified on the River Line. But by that time, all those guys were gone. So another thing about Selkirk at the time, because because Conrail eliminated the Lehigh Valley. They basically abandoned all of it in New York State, and of course most of the freight on the Erie Lackawanna, and it all got rerouted through Selkirk. And Selkirk was an extraordinarily busy yard at the time. They were late 70s, and you would wait for hours here on river trains, and coming off the Mohawk. And in fact, one time I was in a caboose with a conductor we outlawed out here waiting to get into the yard. It was late at night. We both fell asleep. Well, a recrew came out, got on the engines to drag the train in. We woke up in the middle of the glass yard sometime the next morning. But yeah, the waits were terrible. You'd wait, you'd be 2 or 3 deep sometimes, waiting hours to get into Selkirk yard. Of course, eventually all that business kind of tapered off and things got better. So, although most of my career I've spent a lot of time waiting at CPSK. Oh, let me get my notes here. Okay, now I'm going to jump ahead about 15 years for my next section. As I said, from 1981 to 1987, I was furloughed much of the time. I get called back summer, holidays, etc. I got qualified as a conductor in August of 1987 on both the B&A and the River Line. 1991, I went to the engineer school, and I got set up after a couple setbacks in June of 1992. Now, the few years I worked as a River Line conductor were years, I call them the years of carnage. I hit 3 cars, 2 people, had 2 derailments, had 2 broken feet, one on me and one on my brakeman, and knocked down a bridge. Now, if you don't believe the bridge part, oh, geez, I forgot this section here. Anyway, I'm way ahead of myself. But this is the Conrail freight schedule from October 1979. This shows the trains. These are the arrivals and these are the departures. As you can see, quite a few. Although, and this doesn't even show them all because this only shows the trains that did work. Picked up, dropped, originated or terminated. There were several, primarily the eastbound vans weren't listed because all they did was go through Selkirk. Now, I spent most of my career actually on the Boston line. And this is a comparison of freight traffic in October 1979 and September 2019. As you can see, you had basically 7 trains a day. And you had 2 to Boston, 2 to Cedar Hill, which is New Haven, and 1 to Reedville, 1 to South Braintree, and 1 to Springfield. Now, the schedule just shows a westbound from Springfield, but there would be a lot of extras. This shows where the cars would be dropped. And of course, we had a lot of extra work. We had shutdown specials for the General Motors plant at Framingham, which was auto parts, those big 86-foot boxcars, which sometimes, and I remember the first train I ever ran as a brakeman was a shutdown special to Framingham. It was 1 4-axle GE and 1 86-foot boxcar. And they ran you nonstop because they needed those parts yesterday. There were also high and wide specials for General Electric at Pittsfield, and lots of ballast from Trap Rock. At the time, Conrail was doing a lot of rehabilitation of track. And there was a quarry Trap Rock, which is 5 miles west of Springfield, and they were pulling probably 1 or 2 train loads a day out of that place. The normal move would be any train that could spare a little extra tonnage would pick up at Trap Rock. In fact, some of the regular jobs, the vans, on weekends, the engines would run light back to Selkirk. And of course, on weekends, it was, pick up Trap Rock. Now, the van service stayed pretty stable all my entire career. Basically, 3 van trains a day each way between Boston and Selkirk. Although in the 79, there was a one that also went down to New Haven. Now, this is the freight service at the point I retired. The hedge fund that took over CSX managed to really cut everything down. There were 4 trains. There were 2 separate trains for Worcester, one for the P&W and one for the Springfield terminal. And they combined those, which turned that job into a real horror show. And then you had the job to Framingham, 436, 437, which handled all the traffic that used to be handled by the SCRE and the train to Braintree. The 424 and the 425, Selkirk to Springfield, which had to switch Niverville going east. That was the work formerly done by the traveling switcher at Pittsfield, which they eliminated. And of course, you did your drop at Pittsfield for the Housatonic Railroad. So that's pretty much, I never took many pictures of Selkirk. I brought a camera with me maybe 3 times. This is one I took. I'm leaving on a van train for the River Line. As you can see, I'm the conductor. I'm sitting on the left side of the train. But as you can see, it's a bit of a snowy day. You can barely see the hump in the background. This was, I tried to get a sunrise picture. I was leaving on a B&A freight train that was leaving right at sunrise, which happened a lot. That's the East End Tower there. And I'm just coming off the North Departure Yard. This is the bridge I was talking about. I knocked that down on a northbound stack train. Well, I didn't write down the date, but I took a picture of it, of course, afterwards. That's a story for another day, though. Anyway, 1994, I was set up as an engineer, and Conrail was very busy. They had a real shortage of men. About 91, they got rid of the second brakeman, and they had a buyout, and basically the buyout caused an employee shortage. And I basically went to engineer school because my conductor's local chairman was walking around saying, well, I don't think anybody hired out after 1975 is going to have a job. Well, there was plenty of work for everybody. But one day in 1994, I was sitting in a hotel room down in New Jersey. At the time, I was on a comic book jag. I was never really a fan of superheroes, so one of my favorite comics was reprints of the old horror comics from the 50s. And I was reading this particular issue. Now, the idea got in my head, comparing being stuck in a hotel to being stuck in a mausoleum. So shortly thereafter, I got out my X-Acto knife and glue and modified the cover a bit. Now, I haven't been able to get permission for this, so I've kind of redrawn it. And this is how it is on the website today. This was issue 2. Now, I wasn't really planning on doing a series, but because it was a comic book cover, people were asking, I wonder when the next issue is going to come out. So this was about a contest that Conrail held where they were giving away a Jeep Cherokee. And of course, I did a, your odds basically because it was a contest. Like I said, all these are on the website, so I'm not gonna wait along, so everybody can read every one. I'll give you the web address here shortly. But one of the interesting things is odds if you're an old fart on a regular job who hasn't worked a night, weekend, or holiday in 15 years. Well, the winner was from New Haven, Connecticut, conductor, I believe, and of course down there all I have is yard jobs that don't work nights, weekends, or holidays. Issue 3 was about Conrail's plan to become the Big X. They wanted to sell off all their branch lines and just have the main line. So came up with the. Now this is issue 8. This is another thing. This was a kind of did about 6 of these Conrail News Bites, just little kind of little jokes like a late night monologue. Now this right here is probably the most popular one I've ever did. Guys I haven't seen in 20 years, they'll talk about Tilson River and they'll bring up this particular issue. This is Thomas the Tank Engine. Went down the river line. Well, not actually Thomas, his cousin. But make sure you go online to read that one. Now this one is, I didn't just make fun of Conrail. Every once in a while I took a poke at the Union. Now, one thing about Selkirk is in 1981, the engineers formed what's called a super pool. Now, the super pool, the engineers could go to Buffalo, which was the long pool. They could go to Syracuse, which was the short pool, or they could go down to Jersey. Now, since you know, our rates of pay were based on mileage, everybody wanted to go to Buffalo. And of course, the super pool was, you needed a lot of seniority to hold it. And of course, the super poolers kind of ran the show at the union meetings. So this kind of lampoons all of that. And of course, one of the effects of the super pool is a lot of guys from Buffalo came down to work in Selkirk because they could go back home to Buffalo. We had so many guys staying in rooming houses in Ravenna that we called it Buffalo on the Hut. And of course, the other effect is, since everybody always wanted to go to Buffalo's, a lot of people were rather aggressive on the sharpshooting, as we called it. They would adjust their off-duty time so they could line up for a train to Buffalo rather than going down the Syracuse to the river. Now, the river was especially disliked because when you went west, either Syracuse or Buffalo, most of the time you just got off the train. There were a few that did work, but most of them were what we called step-off jobs. You got off, you know, you stopped, changed crews, and off they went. But Jersey, go down to North Jersey Terminal, almost all the trains terminated. And those that didn't had to go through the infamous Hoboken Project. So the super poolers actually came up with the term getting flushed for when they got called to work the river line. Now, at the time, I was working a river line regular job, 3 round trips a week, 1 day off home. Actually, 1 night off, I should say. But so I kind of took this all in stride. I kind of laughed. If I can imagine if I had worked the super pool, I'd have probably been angry when people put the screws to me. Because, you know, you would get called for Jersey job. The guy would get called for Jersey job off the pools. And 10 minutes later, the guy behind him gets called for Buffalo. And it was, I'll tell you, they could have made a soap opera out of it all. Now, this was one, probably the one that's been reposted the most. This was 1996, was rather snowy. And, of course, I rewrote some Christmas carols for people to sing. And every time it snowed for the rest of my career, I would post this. Now this was another theme I used every year, usually around Christmas time. It was basically like a model train flyer. Now, 1996 was kind of a eventful year in the Albany division, and here you have the top one is about a stack train, southbound track stack train going down the river line, hit a rock slide and derailed, and containers ended up in the river. Of course, winter scenery was about all the snow. Talking smoke-free yard shanty, 1996 was the year that Conrail introduced a smoking policy, which did not go over well with smokers. In fact, I did a separate issue on that. And exploding propane car, I did an issue on that. That is on March 6, 1996. On the hump, a car rolled into a propane car a little bit too hard and ruptured the rear end. The propane ignited, and the car actually rocketed out the classification yard by the East End Shanty and down one of the drill tracks, about a mile. Now, everybody, the people involved that saw it, they all thought they were goners, but fortunately, no injuries. Of course, the 80 Mack locomotive was introduced that year too. That was one of, I think, the first AC locomotives that we got. Now, Rock'em Sock'em Railroaders, that refers to a particularly acrimonious union meeting. Unfortunately, I missed it, but apparently somebody almost got pushed out a window. And it was a rather famous deal at the time. This last one, the OCS train set. We had an incident with the office car special. I guess there was actually 2 engineers, and I mean good engineers, and a road foreman aboard. But they misread a signal and went through crossovers a little bit too fast. Of course, we all thought that was hilarious. It didn't derail, but it's not good when it's the office car special. So, of course, I think 1997, we started getting to talk about the mergers. So, you know, that was, I did a lot of stuff on that. But this is top 10 reasons Conrail's merging with CSX. As you can see, I was a David Letterman fan at the time. But this was another one, top 10 differences between Conrail and the Titanic. Now, this, in March 1997, I made my last river line trip. I got bumped off a regular yard job, and I could have held the extra list, but I like to work regular jobs, so I had a schedule. So I went in the yard. Now, Selkirk, from time to time, they would have labor problems. We had a couple of strikes that lasted maybe 7 or 8 hours, but there were several incidents of people working safely, as they used to say. And this one got kind of bad. In fact, a Conrail spokesman was talking to a local paper and referred to us as slackers. Now, of course, this this was a big joke for everybody, and that's all you heard, slacker this, slacker that. But I did top 10 signs you might be a slacker. And of course, working the hub. This is probably one of my favorites. It's kind of an ode to Dr. Seuss, titled "The Grump on the Hump." The day yard master was a bit of a grouch, and of course, I was on the night humper, so I would have to put up with him usually before he went home. He kind of inspired this one. Okay, October 1997. I should say Halloween. I came to work dressed as the slacker hacker. Let's say an executioner. Now, when I reported to work, they knew right away I was up to something because I was all dressed in black. I didn't have my costume on when I get out of my car. But I brought a bag of 100 grand candy bars and was handing them out, saying, "Oh, here's your severance, here's your severance, young." But I went upstairs to the hump tower to give one to the yard master. And I walked by the terminal superintendent's office. Now, the wall is all glass there. Of course, the terminal superintendent was in there with 2 train masters. And as soon as I walked by, they looked up and saw me. I figured I was in trouble now. And I figured, what the hell? So I went in the terminal superintendent's office, and I said, "Gentlemen, I'm here to discuss your future." And I gave them all candy bars, and they thought it was hilarious. And in fact, the reason this picture is here is because one of the train masters actually ran down to his car and got a camera. Gave me the pic. That's in the terminal superintendent's office. And I have a feeling that if it weren't for the candy, I probably would have gotten in trouble. And of course, this was Christmas of 1997. The CSX merger was getting closer and closer. So I wrote this one. Now, this was kind of after the merger. "How do you like us now?" was kind of something that we said a lot. Because, the Union Pacific, Southern Pacific merger was fresh in everybody's mind. So we figured it was going to be a fiasco. And it was a little bit, but not nearly to the level that UPSP was. And of course, I actually made these little t-shirts. I printed up these on special paper that you can make iron-on prints out of, printed them up, put one on a shirt, and actually I said $1, but most of them I gave away. Now, this is kind of the end of the story. Back before, I did a issue called Helpful Hints for New Hires. That was issue 50. It was a 2-page issue, but it actual helpful hints about, working on the railroad, not taking things personally. But it actually ended up being distributed to new hires in the training center down in Atlanta by CSX for a number of years. So this one was done May of last year, Helpful Hints for Train Masters. Now, this was a whole new bunch of train masters, young. They're always pressuring us. I mean, the whole job changed when Maple Ridge took over CSX. And these are actually, I see nobody's name was mentioned. You could put this up in any, but these are actually useful suggestions. And of course, some of the things, of course, were things that people have actually said to me, like, you're going to get me fired. But yeah, the job got tough when Maple Ridge took over CSX. They were just always pushing and pushing. Up till that time, my entire career, it was basically they would leave you alone, let you do your work. So anyway, I did what I always do. I put one up in Selkirk and I put one up in the Worcester Yard office. So I ended up getting the first investigations of a 43-year career because of these. And it was actually a double header. I went to one investigation for each. Now, this was, they came to me and counseled me, and did you do this? And I said, yes. And I said, I'll sign for it, but they were insistent on having an investigation. Somebody gave me the idea to try to get it postponed, because if I get it postponed to September, I would have brought in pizza, sodas, and hey, welcome my retirement party. But my local chairman just couldn't get it postponed. Now, another guy had a big derailment. His got postponed 3 times. So anyway, June 24th, I went to 2 investigations back to back. And of course, you wait a month for the result. And the result was 5 days time served, which basically, I didn't serve any time. But so my final day was September 4th of last year. What I did on my last day, I made a special just for the train masters. I posted this on my last day in the locker room where there's no cameras. Oh, I forgot to mention that. Through the investigation, even though I admitted doing it, I had to sit through the videos of me posting them in both yard offices. And of course, this is sung to the tune of Mighty Mouse. But he's in this action-packed issue, our hero vanquishes his arch nemesis, the bulletin board bully. But I put this one in about 12 of my favorites in the locker room on the ends of the lockers, all up and down, before I left. Now, I have a special one I just wrote. It's one I wanted to do for quite a while. And it's kind of the history. People always complain about the river line, even today. Of course, now it's a shared assets terminal. And I haven't been down there since, but what they tell me is that Norfolk Southern trains get all the priority. But this map shows the arrangement of the North Jersey terminal in, say, the late 80s, when they first started running stack trains. Now, you would come down the river line here, and right here was something called the Swamp Switch, Northern Junction. You have to stop the train. It's manual crossover. You had to open it up. Now, it's 10 miles an hour through here. Went through the famous bathtub, which was, if you're not familiar with it, they had to undercut the bridge under the Northeast Corridor to allow stack trains to go through. Now, basically, this is all one big swamp. So the undercut was actually going to be below water level. So they had to build a big concrete enclosure, which has mechanical pumps to keep it from flooding. And, you know, to be able to get stack trains down here. Because as you see, the Weehawken Tunnel, 17'9" height restriction. Now you got down to Croxton. There was no direct track as yet to take you across to this place called Marion. So basically, you had to stop, the conductor would line the switches, would pull through, the engineer would pull through, past Nave, usually come out to about here on the National Docks, which, you know, you're far away on the other side of a mountain, radio contact was kind of tough. He would line the switches up for the Croxton running track and tell the engineer okay to back up, and you would back up through the tunnel. Now bear in mind, when the engine's in the tunnel, you had no communication with the conductor. Of course, then you pulled forward onto the Marion running track, opened up the Marion here, and you had to pull out on the old Pennsylvania P&H line. And usually the engine was out here by the old Harrismus Cove Yard. Then a yard job would come out from South Kearney, tie onto your rear end, and pull you in. And of course, sometimes the yard crew made the double because you weren't going to fit all on one track, and sometimes you did. But normally the engines would go to the meadows here, but sometimes you had to take them down to Oak Island and 91 Bay. So the Conrail, of course, this was an easy job, fixing up KW here so that trains could go straight across. That was just relaying a little track. But the other project, which took considerably longer, and I think they finished in 1995, they had to build what they called the Marion connection from Hack directly to KW. Oops. Like I said, so the one backup move lasted a lot longer than the double backup move. Well, I actually wanted to do this one before I retired to show some of the younger guys what it was like, because I doubt there's anybody left that even remembers making this move. In fact, in all of Selkirk, there's only one guy who's older than me. So that's kind of it. That's the web address, talesfromtheriver.net. If you want to read them, I have all the, most all of the Conrail era issues put up. Still working on the captions for them, but it's like basically issues 1 through 61. So you can go on there and enjoy them at your leisure. And that's it for my presentation.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay. Now I got to figure out how to turn this off.
I think I can override it from my end here.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So I forgot to share this before. The boxcar is on our website. If you're interested in checking it out, there's some more information there about the project. There's some information about our plans and stuff like that as well. So
that was great. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian, very much for that. It was very, very interesting, and it's kind of neat to see employees, contemporary take on what was going on, stuff you were writing at the time as things were happening. That's an interesting perspective on what happened during Conrail. Ed, are you in front of your computer, or did you walk away?
He walked away.
Walked away.
Oh no, I'm here.
Okay. Ed, do you want to talk about the archives?
Yeah, I'll love to talk about the archives. So, let's see. I'm gonna do some. Host disabled screen sharing again.
Yeah, sorry.
Every time that happens, I feel like I should get the whammy sound.
Here.
There we go. All right, I'm the host now. Y'all better watch out. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about today, as I said, isn't as cool as the boxcar, but it is to talk a little bit about the things that we're going to be putting in said boxcar, and that would be our archival collection. One of the big jobs of the CRHS is to to collect objects, collect artifacts, and keep them safe for posterity, make them available to people who are doing research, and use them as interpretive tools to, and I'm going to get a lot of stickers here, to tell the Conrail story. So as part of that, over the years, we've been going through all of the donated, or we've started going through the donated material that people have given us. Things from individuals, things actually donated by Conrail themselves, and Norfolk Southern, CSX, etc. And in order to make that information really, or to make those objects really useful, we need to have a catalog of what those things are. So originally we started using a Google spreadsheet for all of that, which worked great for a while, but in our discussions with the folks over at Shippensburg University, they turned us on to this really fantastic tool called omeca. And omeca is this software that lives on the internet that allows us to capture information about collection objects and present it in a nice, sortable, browsable catalog. So we, Rudy and I embarked on a project to move all of the records that we had in the spreadsheet into this omeca system. So I figured today I'd give you a quick tour around it, make sure everyone who's on the call knows about it, because we think it's one of the fantastic things that we do. And this is, this type of thing is the reason why we get to be a nonprofit. And you can start using it for your own research, and hopefully it will prod folks who may have some objects of historical significance to donate them themselves. Additionally, we're really hoping that seeing this is going to help get some folks more interested in helping to catalog these things, because even though we've got thousands of items cataloged already, there are still many, many, many thousands more. And while I tend to keep a box or two around the house here in my office, much to my wife's chagrin, and go through them while I'm sitting on boring conference calls, unlike this one, many hands make light work. And it's the type of thing that we can easily deputize folks to do, and give you a little bit of training and set you loose, and it can make a really huge difference. One of the big, really exciting things about doing that work, too, is you get to find really cool stuff as you're doing it. We'll talk about some of my favorites that I've come across, specifically some proposals from General Electric and EMD for crazy electric locomotives that never ended up getting made, but it was always, I always found it fascinating to see them and think about what if. But I figure I'll start with a tour of the archives themselves. You can see the website is crhscollection.omeca.net. You can also get to that by going through our website, crhs.org. The site itself has a couple of ways to start browsing. The one that we like the most is browse by subject, because that page breaks it down by all sorts or by the different types of things that we have in the collection. We've categorized these things to make it easy to find them. For example, some of them, like one-to-one equipment. This one just went live today. We're very excited to share. But this is the record for our boxcar. You can see we keep track of what type of thing it is, where it came from, where it currently is, when we added it, and other ways that you can explore the collection as well, like by class, etc. There are a couple of these areas that I think are really great to browse. I like artifacts. That's a fun one. Equipment diagrams and manuals. We actually have a pretty substantial collection of operators manuals for everything from locomotives themselves. If, for example, you want to know how to run an SD60M, to individual things like brake valves. Now, one thing that I do want to talk about, in a lot of cases, you'll see we have images of these things, but we haven't gone through and done all the work of scanning them. That's because taking the images of them are really useful for reference, so we know what we've got, what, where it is, you know, what it looks like in case we're comparing something else that someone might be donating. You know, because these images are really easy to take while I'm sitting here at my desk with my cell phone. But for other things, sometimes we want to scan them, and there are things that generally will take a lot more effort to kind of get digitized. And that's a long-term project. And once we have the space in the boxcar, we're not only are we going to be able to house these things, but we'll also have some space that's much more geared to being able to work on them and work through it and digitize it in proper fashions, besides just taking my, you know, I jokingly call it the KGB scanning method of snapping a photo on my desk. But there are some fun things in here that we have taken more in-depth photos of. For example, I think this one might be one of them. There we go. I shot a bunch of photos of the contents of this. Again, not everything, but many of the exciting pages. And this is the proposal from GE for an E55 locomotive, made to the Pensy, but again, it's one of those things. It could have been a Conrail option. See what that looks like. One of the other things that we keep track of in the archives is also, and this is very important, where the object is currently resides, so that if someone is looking for it, we can figure out where it is. In this case, Rob Sartain's got it because he is using this for primary research for an upcoming quarterly article, and we're really excited about that. In addition to just items in here that are documents, we also have a bunch of our photos that are part of the CRHS collection. And this is a thing that you can spend lots and lots of time going through. You can see there's 1,300 or the more. This is a rapidly growing area. You can see we've got thumbnails of these. The images are on here big enough that you could get a sense of what it is you're looking at. But importantly for the Society's ability to control the distribution and use of these images, they're not the size that you'd be able to use in some sort of publication. Now, if you happen to be working on a publication and you would like to use some of these images, you're more than welcome to. It's just a question of reaching out to us to get the high resolution scan and working out licensing or permissions for that type of for the image use. As you can see, there are lots of them, in case you ever wanted to see the bottom of, ooh, that was not a fun day for somebody. So this is all the stuff you can see from the front end, and you yourself can just go browse. But what I wanted to also do was give you a quick tour around the back end to see what goes into some of this. So this is the Omeca dashboard and our list of items inside this system. This is the management interface. And in here, we're able to make quick edits to these things. Everything has an ID, its name, its title, its description, metadata about it, what type of items it is, the date, etc. Links to where you can find where the system can find the file and the tags. And this is where we can make just quick updates. You know, if we realize that this wreck was not actually Norristown, but it was Bridgeport, you know, we could make a change there. But one thing that is somewhat challenging is when you're dealing with the bulk of the huge number of items that we do, in this case 3,000 so far, entering them all directly through this interface may not necessarily be the quickest way to do it. So we still continue to use the spreadsheet that we had originally created. That is just a really handy way for us to very quickly and painlessly add items using the controlled vocabulary for what type of item it is, subcategories, etc. And then using this tool that Rudy created that is fantastic, we're able to export the contents from this list into a format that we can then import right into Omeca. and upload, hundreds or even thousands of items right in one shot. It's a really great tool, a really great workflow, and it allows us to do a lot of, to do one of the important things for the society of cataloging all of this stuff and making it available. Speaking of making items available, if you happen to be browsing around the collection and you find something that you would like to get a better look at, please reach out to us. I believe the email is, I think it's collection or archives at the CRHS.org, or just use the handy contact us form. Drop us a line, and we'll come up with a way to get you access to the object to take a look at it. Similarly, if you're interested in donating to the collection, we've got another form you can fill out where you let us know what it is, and we work out a way to either have you drop it off with us or have someone come pick it up. I recently did that myself. You can see the over my shoulder here is a photo of a couple of Jeeps cruising across the C&D Canal. That was a recent donation. It used to hang in, I believe, the IHB offices out in Chicago, and that came to us along with a wonderful framed print of the of the division map. And that object, as you can see, is all recorded here in the system. By Kurt, it was a donation by Kurt Miles back a couple of months ago. We just met up in a parking lot, and he handed them off to us. Handed them off to me. It was really easy, painless, and no one caught COVID from it. So, great process for that. So I'm going to take a look, see, are there any questions? Anyone have anything you want to ask about on the topic of the archives? I can see the actual chat. There we go. Is Omeca a commercial program? So Omeca is actually an open source piece of software, which means it is essentially commercial, but it is offered for free. However, the hosting for this Omeca software is provided through a company called omeca.net that charges a remarkably minor fee for it. I think it's something like $80 a year or something like that. And when you talk about the gigabytes of storage that we're using for it, it's a remarkably great deal. Any other questions? All right, fantastic. Well, then in that case, I'm going to turn it back over to Rudy, and so we can go on with our next presentation with the Crucio slides.
Yeah. So I was talking about the number of things we have in the archives, and there's like 1,300 photos in there right now. One of the things that I've been working on while we're all quarantined here is we got a collection donated to us about 3 years ago. I think it was 2017, so about 3 years ago. There was a gentleman named Ralph Curcio who passed away, and willed his collection to his friend Dan McFadden. And Dan graciously donated all of his Conrail stuff to us. It was about 2,700 slides, roughly. So one of my quarantine projects has been scanning those slides. I'm about halfway done, so I'm got 1,229 of them scanned. It's a little under halfway, I guess. So what we'll do here today is I'm going to go through some of them. They're not really in any order, but they are kind of grouped by location. So the first section here is 213 slides, and they're all from South Jersey. There's more from all over the Northeast Corridor, from Eastern Pennsylvania. So we can kind of go, and see what people have interest in continuing on through. I actually have not cataloged them yet, so they are not in the archives yet. I just finished scanning what I've got here yesterday, so they're not cataloged yet. But there will be some that I don't know the locations on because they are not marked on the slide. And I've actually got the slides here in binders. There's two 3-inch binders full of slides so far, and that's just half of them. So I'm going to be looking here at the slides and see if maybe some of you guys can help us identify some locations on stuff that we don't know. So that'll be kind of a good way to get our archives up to date here. I've got the archive spreadsheet up here. I've got slides here on my screen. Let's see if I can share my screen. And we're sharing the screen. So this photo was taken in May of 1990, somewhere in South Jersey, and we don't know where. Some of them, there aren't a lot to go off of. Some of them there are. Some of them are grouped. Some of them aren't. So, sometimes we can identify it based on the group of slides that it's taken with. For instance, this one was taken at the same time as the next slide here, which is obviously in Morristown, New Jersey. So it's probably near Morristown, New Jersey, but we don't know if it's near, in, around, whatever. So if you see something that you can identify, please shout out to us in the chat, and we'll see if we can get that in our archives.
You've got somebody who lives in South Jersey on chat there, huh?
Do I?
Yep.
Okay.
If you pop up the chat, there's a,
You figure
it
out
says
to pop,
Mike A. I'm not sure.
you figure out to pop up the chat while I'm doing this. That yellow glow on my face is from the archival spreadsheet. Okay. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can pull the chat up here.
I can monitor chat from downstairs.
Okay.
That's fine. And you're recording, so we can go back through the chat.
That's
to
true.
Identify.
Also true. Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. I'm pretty sure this is the depot in Pemberton, although it's not labeled on the slide. Also, I believe Pemberton. Like this chat. Yes, it is Pemberton. Okay. I'm actually going to start putting these in while I'm going through them. It seems like a thing that would make sense. What is this? What is that? This is in Windsor. These were all taken in May of 1990. This is in Windsor, New Jersey.
Hey, Rudy, is that a caboose after 1984?
No.
And this is how I get myself put back on mute.
So, as an aside about cabooses, the Conrail caboose book that's coming out in September is dedicated to Ed. For Ed's original take on Conrail caboose operations. Ed has I guess had, at this point, had a very nice N-scale layout.
And there's still chunks of it sitting in the next room.
Okay. Has portions of an N-scale layout that was set in December of 1985. on which he had piles of cabooses. And upon my first visit to Ed's layout, I told him that cabooses were basically retired and stored by that point, other than a couple of local jobs. And he became very distraught, and I think I may have changed his life slightly. But that also, on a somewhat serious note, illustrated the need for some kind of writing about Conrail's caboose usage. And someone with the extensive knowledge that Ed had was somewhat unaware of the timeframes in which they were operating. So that's one of the main reasons the book happened, was because Ed's layout was unrealistic. So
Happy to serve as a warning to others.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So as a tribute to Ed's contribution to the inspiration for the book is dedicated to him. Anyway. So this is, again, taken at the same time, probably in the same area of South Jersey. I don't know where this is exactly. Same series of photos. That might help. I guess it's in Windsor. Yes, that would be the FINA, Oil and Chemical Company in Windsor, New Jersey, according to the sign in this photo. A little bit blurry, but at least you can read it. This is part of the reason we scan every slide too. There are some photographers or some archives that'll just scan the really good stuff. This is a blurry slide, but it gave us a location. So sometimes these are the kinds of things that are helpful. And that's that curve off the first photo too, so that tells me exactly where that is as well. Yeah, all these, John, you just asked about dates. The dates on all of the ones I've shown so far are May of 1980. I don't have a specific day. But these are all taken in May of 1980. And these are all, looks like they're all around Windsor, New Jersey, somewhere in that area. I'm sorry, May of 90. May of 1990, I'm sorry, May of 90. This is obviously right in the center of Windsor. That sign is still there, but it's moved, I don't know, maybe 100 feet back from where it's toward the left of this photo, from where it's shown here. Actually, let me show you real quick. What you guys can't see right now is this. This is our spreadsheet that I showed you earlier. Everything highlighted in yellow is the Archival Collection, so I could find it for this presentation, which is with that yellow glow in my faces in the camera. I'm literally filling in these locations as I'm going through this. So we are actively archiving stuff right now on this call. It's really just a good excuse to look through a bunch of old Conrail photos. Just flagging the crossing in Windsor. We scan all these photos at ridiculously high resolution as well, so if anyone can identify this gentleman, please let us know. Train coming across the crossing. Flagman's going to hop back on the other end of the locomotive. Not sure where this is, but it is the next slide in the same roll, so. It appears to be the same train. All right. This is obviously a different train. This was taken in October of '91 in Bordentown. So from what I understand when we got the collection from Dan McFadden, Dan went through this stuff and identified what he could. Apparently Ralph was not particularly good at keeping records. And when Dan got it from him, from his estate, not a single slide was labeled. So Dan tried to help us out as best he could and labeled whatever locations he knew. So that's kind of what I'm working off of here, is some of the stuff that Dan had written on the slides originally. This is also in Bordentown. Look at the Ma and Pa boxcar there. And the Expensi N5C. That's still rolling around in this is October of '91. These photos were taken. So this is also October of '91. For the N5Cs, yes, that was the standard placement of that smoke jack. It was right in the middle. They piped it up into the cupola.
Are you seeing the chat?
Here we are. So this is October '91. I don't remember where this plaque is, but it's off the Camden and Amboy, obviously. Another view of looks like after they put their train together. This is also in Bordentown. Plaque is in Bordentown too. Thank you. A couple of views here of the same train. Guys hanging off the back of it. And here's the front of the train coming through Bordentown. Now the River Line light rail. Okay, cool. Ed, are you trolling me? I don't think that is a black walkaway. That being said, I do have some builder's photos of that engine, or those engines I can probably take a look at. There you go. So the 1001 and a Aston 1500 there. It's also in Bordentown. Usually the same location. Also in October of '91. All right, so now we're going somewhere else. And I don't know where this is. Maybe somebody will recognize the water tower in the background there. Oh boy, is Don going to share some knowledge here? Don, you want to talk? I can unmute you if you want.
Well, they always painted them black. Juniata in particular would paint them black with a roller, and but it didn't stick very well. They didn't do good surface preparation, and the black didn't really stick. It wore off to the blue that was underneath. They would always shoot the blue first. But the standard painting and styling diagram has black walkways. So everything from GE and EMD knew black walkways,
Huh.
which is a pain in the neck if you have a model that you bought painted and it's blue. Then you
Mhm.
have to paint them black.
Interesting.
But yeah, that's the standard is black. So if you want them the way they're supposed to be, they're black. If you want them the way they kind of wound up in service after a few years after being repainted, sometimes they look blue.
Interesting. Thank you, Don. That's
And then the other weird thing is GE and EMD. GE would paint the stepwells blue, and EMD would paint them black. And nobody in the mechanical ever really cared that one was right and one was wrong. I think they're supposed to be black, but GE just kind of did stuff.
That's so interesting because the challenge that I think modelers have always faced is that when you see the photos, it's not really clear. It's like, yeah, they're kind of black and kind of blue, and that makes a lot of sense because it's, it was the black that's wearing through to the blue.
Right.
It sounds so silly, but I feel like a one-page article citing like, okay, I signed off on this and it was my decision would go such a long way to settling that, and would probably be the most popular quarterly back issue ever.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because then whenever someone did it, I could throw a copy of it at them and be like, see.
Yeah.
Well, that would be hugely helpful for us to send to model manufacturers as well, so they all get it right.
Yeah, well, it's more work for them, though.
Hey, you know what? That's their problem, not ours.
Exactly. Yeah, okay.
Although now I feel like I'm going to have to go down to West Baltimore with a bucket of black paint and make amends.
Do it the Juniata way. Just a roller on a stick with a bucket of black paint. That's what they did. They would just roller it onto how the diamond plate is kind of tacked down on they would just roller it onto the diamond plate. The area, around the diamond plate would still be blue.
Fantastic.
Really wanted to get picky.
Hey, that's what we're here for.
All right.
Thanks, Don.
You're welcome.
So that's that. All right, so so we're back here. I don't know where this is. Heavy remains of an Armstrong switch interlocking or distant target for handset switch. Interesting. Different view of the same location. I don't know if that helps anybody with the location. Hey, am I supposed to keep you unmuted? I can unmute you again if you want. Okay. Not labeled. I feel like someone will know where this is. This is June of '95. Bridgeport. Cool. So this says this says it's the Deepwater local. This is December of '95. No location though. It just says it's a Deepwater local. This is all Bridgeport, Mike? Sweet. There are going to be quite a few in this series, it looks like. Some of these blue marks that you see here are scratches on the slide. So if we ever wanted to use this in some kind of publication, I have to use a little bit of photoshopping on that to fix those. You can see them on the tank car and in the grass over here. The Conrail cab air conditioner there, which is the front door propped open with a flag. Again, some damage here on the slide. Or not on the slide. That's something drawn on my screen. Interesting. There we go. These are all kind of the same crossing. Let's say they either stop there or something, or just crawl across it really slowly. The same job. I assume it's in the same area.
So that all looks like Bridgeport. I remember I once spent an afternoon with a couple of friends hanging out, waiting for that job coming south there at that crossing on the hottest day of the summer, like today. And honestly, it was that moment when I was like, geez, I think I need a new hobby.
And here you are many years later.
Yeah, exactly. Looking at photos of that same thing on the hottest day of it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, at least you're looking at it from your air-conditioned house.
That's true.
Your hobby has improved at least that much. These are all going to be Bridgeport. There's that crossing again. Yeah, this is that same job. All right, so the next shots here are, these are from March of '97. Whoops. And they're taken in Paulsboro. Thanks, Doug. I see your note on Pedrickstown there. There's a couple shots here of this Operation Lifesaver. Jeep 38 here. This is all taken in the yard at Paulsboro. The sign says so, so I guess that's correct. The amount of activity down here in Paulsboro, and let's see, this is, yeah, March of 1997. These photos were taken. There's power for at least 3 different jobs sitting in this photo. Nice broadside shot of the Operation Lifesaver Jeep 38 there. Check out the green station sign on the building there too. There's a whole bunch more shots here. He found the Operation Lifesaver engine and he took a bunch of photos of it. So a lot of similar shots. There's a nice straight on side shot. If you even need to know the placement of the Operation Lifesaver lettering. Another job coming up to pass them. Look at that. There's 4 trains in the shot now. Still in Paulsboro. See you, George. Thanks for joining us today. One of our members, Kevin Smith, is sitting in my living room, and I can hear him telling Carolyn that these are both ST40-2R rebuilds. A couple shots of them here. Couple side shots of them there. All right. So this photo is not labeled with a location. I don't know if we're still in Paulsboro. I guess we got to still be in the same area. Okay, so Paulsboro. All right, buildings you can model. This is still got to be in the same general area, although this one is also not labeled. Where is it? Interesting. This is Gibbstown. Awesome. Same place, maybe? Because they all are. Yeah, I know. These are all taken, I guess, at Kearney's Point there. Yeah, these are all taken in the same location, it looks like. Yeah, that was new. You don't recognize this location? Are we still at Kearney's Point here? Ooh. Here? Headertown seems to be the consensus here. I don't know where this is. In a swamp somewhere. Okay. Porcupine Road. Another set of stuff here taken in Paulsboro. A lot of the same engines we saw already. Just more different views of them. Where did I rescan slides? I may have rescanned some slides here. Interesting. We're going to take a look at that later. I think we saw some of these already. There we go. Let's go to there. That's the Bridgeport Moonwool Bridge. Okay. No idea. I thought the hazmat was derailed in that funky bridge at Paulsboro. This is back at Paulsboro again. It's 573. Again at Paulsboro. Again at Paulsboro. These are still May of 97. And now we're somewhere else. This is also taken May of 97. And there's no locations on these anywhere. Yeah, it was kind of my fault. That's not South Jersey. The most of Ralph's stuff was in some kind of order, but there's some that wasn't. So this may just be something random. Yeah, that was kind of my thought was he had a line somewhere too. Ralph Curcio lived in Princeton, so his stuff was kind of shot around South Jersey and Eastern Pennsylvania. He did a lot of Northeast Corridor stuff. So, but there's also some really random stuff in there too. So there's a whole set of stuff from Altoona. There's some stuff from Central Pennsylvania and Enola. So he got around as well. Now we're back to the Moonwool Bridge, which I assume is Bridgeport again. Still another 97 here. Based on the street sign in the background here, we're somewhere between Paulsboro and Bridgeport. This Bridgeport is left and Paulsboro is right. A busy line in the 90s. Mobil Oil Corporation. According to the sign over here on the left. If that means anything to anyone as a location, but we're back down at the end of the line in Kearney's Point here. And we're back in Paulsboro again for one slide for some reason. And back to Kearney's Point. There's one of the coal trains there for the cogen plant. Just to confirm, this photo was taken in the 90s, right? Kevin, what kind of car is that? 70 Caprice. Here we go. So somebody in this May of 1997 photo was driving a 1970 Caprice. Nice bumper. Just some nice scenic shots down there. Thank you. Mobil Oil shot was at Paulsboro. Which number was that? Here. 95. That same water tank again. See, in this image, the walkways look blue. This looks like it's not South Jersey to me. I don't know where this is though. I don't know. I'm looking at the cat poles in the background where this one might be. It's one of the SD60 demonstrator locomotives. You can see the blue fuel tank and all the white paint coming through. Yeah, it could be Morrisville. It's a pretty good guess. Hang on, does it tell us anything better? Look at the number boards. It's probably Morrisville, is my guess. Roger on the 100% Morrisville. This is that funky bridge in Paulsboro, I think. Two smashboard signals there. And there's the bizarre bridge itself. I'm pretty sure this is where they had the hazmat derailment a couple years ago. The rest of this stuff is kind of a mix of random South Jersey photos. Here's some of the UHS's equipment. That looks like it's in Ringo's to me. I think Ringo's, New Jersey. This engine is now running on the SMS. Go back to Carney's Point for some reason. Back at Ringo's again for some reason. This engine's in Boonton, New Jersey now. In that paint job. Oh, hey. This is the Safety on Rails theater box car. I don't know if there's a location noted on this slide. I think there was not. No, there's not a location noted. It's taken in May of '97. this engine or this boxcar was the Operation Lifesaver boxcar that Conrail refitted in the early 90s. And this car is now owned by Operation Toy Train and used for Toys for Tots collections in New Jersey. One of the directors still has this original plaque that went on the car. Where's the NJ Jeep? Again, I think this is down in Ringo's, New Jersey. Also Ringo's. This engine is also now painted CNJ. And I don't know where that is. I'm back in the Conrail stuff. This is, I think this is still pre-merger. Yep, this is still May of 97. I'm not sure where these photos were taken though. Yeah, that's what I thought, the eye line. It looks to be the same roll of film that he was shooting the stuff in Ringo's at. So my guess is it's somewhere maybe in Three Bridges, New Jersey or something like that. I don't know where these two GP40 shoes were spotted. There's the bridge again in Bridgeport. Some of these are kind of in a somewhat random order. Building sign? Oh, hey. That building sign. I don't know if that tells you anything, Ed. Okay, so it is in Three Bridges then. Sweet. So we're back down in the Penns Grove secondary again. There's the bridge of Bridgeport. This is down towards Carney's Point again. Again, Carney's Point. He's standing on a dirt mound here. Penn Central hopper there in full Penn Central paint in May of 97 in the background. The same train, it looks like. Sweet. Better town. Looks like here we're going to start changing it up a little bit because here's the depot in Woodbury. Same train again. Gloucester City, awesome. And then I assume we're, I don't know where we are here. This is a total left field. Oh, cool. So I don't know where this location is. I don't know if we're still in South Jersey here or. These still aren't labeled. These are all from June of '97. None of these are labeled in here. Okay, Fairless Hills, PA makes sense for the coil cars. Nice shot of an LMS engine. And then for some reason, we're back at Kearney's Point again. Pull with the cross box. Read the grade crossing number. On this one? Doubtful. No. Doug, this one is in Jutland. Okay. Yeah, I can't read that from here. So. Yeah, thanks, Ed. I can do a lot of things, but that's not one of the things I can do. Back in Paulsboro again for some reason. Here's a monster tank car for you. Back at the bridge in Paulsboro. A couple different views of that same strange A-frame bridge. No, that is not my truck, Tristan. So these photos are labeled Crosswicks Creek. I don't know where that is. It's like Bordentown. Okay, I'll go with Bordentown. A couple different shots of that same bridge. This is a post-split shot. This is May of 2000 here. So yes, this is Old Camden and Amboy. So that is the end of the South Jersey stuff. So we just cataloged 213 photos. At least got the locations for them. So I agree with that. I think it's probably about time to call this. We had slated till 5, but we were originally thinking we're gonna have some more presenters, and I think that's about it for us today. If you have any interest in helping out with the archives, with helping catalog things, with using some of the materials in the archives to write an article for the quarterly, any of that kind of stuff, please reach out to me or Ed, and we will certainly appreciate your help. the Curcio stuff is the last of our photo collection, I believe, that hasn't been scanned yet. I have that here to scan over the next couple of days. So that should be the last of our photo stuff that needs to get scanned. But if you have, I mean, there's stuff on the archives already from John Blanda, who donated some stuff to us. A few things on there we don't know the locations for. So you happen to look through the archives and you find something that you know a location for, or you know more about the image than we have listed, please reach out to us. We want to be able to provide the most amount of information that we possibly can for our viewers. So let's see if I can stop sharing that. And let's do that. Okay. So if nobody else has any questions or other information they would like to share, or information that they would like us to share to the group for kind of the good of everybody's news, I think that's going to wrap up our third quarter meeting. So. I hope everybody enjoyed our little experimental virtual meeting thing we did here. It's been a kind of interesting learning curve for us as well as the board and as the administrators. And so, you know, hopefully we can you know, get back to doing in-person meetings sometime soon. But if we can't, and if there's not a safe way to do that, at least we know we can do this as an alternative. And this may be something we continue doing with some regularity, even after we kind of get back to our regular meeting schedule, because we can do this fairly simply from home in between our regular meetings. If there's somebody that wants to do a slideshow, we can certainly set this up for our membership. So if you are interested in doing something like this in the future, again, reach out to the board, reach out to me, and we can figure it out. But otherwise, you know, stay tuned. Your quarterly will be in a week or so, and we'll have some more news for you. So, greetings from Germany. Excellent. So, with that, I think we're going to wrap this up. So, thank you very much for everybody for attending. And Ed, any final thoughts on your end, or?
I just wanted to say thanks, everyone. This is, you know, it's a weird times we live in, but I'm glad that we could still get together, and hopefully everyone came away with something worth their time.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. And thanks to look for your quarterly in the next week or so, and there'll be some more information on our current projects, and hopefully we'll see you all soon.